Imagine a world without the Porsche 911. As a Porsche enthusiast, or just a car enthusiast, it's unthinkable, isn't it? But that's exactly what Porsche envisaged at the start of the 1970s as it plotted the model's replacement. First, with a mid-engined car that fell foul of inter-brand automotive politics. And when that car failed, and that's a fascinating story in itself, it needed a new plan, and quickly. The result? This car, the 928, Porsche's award-winning, groundbreaking wonder car. Of course, history tells us that the 911 did indeed live on, and the 928, well, it became an increasingly powerful, expensive GT car in its own little niche. But what if history had been different? What if the 928 was the sports car future of the company? What would life have been like without the 911? Welcome to United by the Drive, the official YouTube channel of Porsche Club of Great Britain, where today we're going to answer that question. And to do so, you need an early 928 with a manual gearbox. You need a car just like this one. The new 928 would use cutting-edge tech to deliver a driving experience like no other. Sports car, luxurious GT, daily driver, all wrapped up in one clean, instantly recognisable aerodynamic shape. Just where do you start with what Porsche created? A 2+2 powered by an all-new V8 engine with a transaxle gearbox for optimal weight distribution and one-piece PU panels covering the crash bars front and rear for the first time with a road car. Then there's the Weissach rear axle, where cornering load resulted in the outer rear wheel automatically towing in for handling, agility and stability. The list of technical achievements goes on and on. Launched in 1977, the 928 remains the only car to have won the prestigious European Car of the Year award. In 1979, Porsche decided to really give the 928 its claws, expanding the engine from 4.5 to 4.7 litres for a full 300 horsepower and adding front and rear spoilers amongst a host of upgrades. This became the S model. Which brings us to this example, chassis number 138, delivered to South Africa in November 1980. By the time it was imported to the UK much later in life, it was predictably rust-free but in need of much TLC and full of sand. Porsche Club member Simon, along with Ben from specialists Renspeed, have lavished around 250 hours of meticulous care and attention to bring it up to the standard it's in today, making it a great example of an early manual 928. So let's just imagine for a moment that it's November 1980 and you've just left Lindsay Saker Motors of Johannesburg, your local Porsche dealership, with your new 928S manual. The first impression, inevitably, with a 928 is that it's a big car. Now, it's not really that big by modern standards, but certainly by the standards of the late 70s, it is a big car. It's also a heavy car for the time at around about 1.5 tons. Again, by modern standards, well, that's the weight of a 992.2 Carrera pretty much. But back then, that was quite a weighty figure. And you can feel that. I mean, there's power steering, but you can sense the heft of this car. It feels like a solid piece of machinery. It feels incredibly stable on the road. The thing I always think about with 928s is that it feels a bit like driving the Millennium Falcon. I feel like maybe you're Han Solo sat in this amazing broad cockpit with a great view out. I mean, amazing visibility, especially the 360 visibility with those unique rear side glazed panels, which you could just see everything. Now, The 928 just makes the most incredible burble at idle. I mean, most of it is exhaust noise. It really sounds like a tugboat waiting to leave harbour. But once you're up and running, the car's actually rather sophisticated. So you don't get lots of muscle car noise. You get sort of a whine, but it's very refined. It's kind of effortless. It's only when you use more throttle that you start to hear a bit more of that V8. But certainly the first impression of it is that it will just be an immense way of tackling big mileages. It's so comfortable, the driving position, these seats are sort of both soft and supportive at the same time. The dogleg gearbox, well, it needs a little bit of care getting from that dogleg first into second and the regular H pattern, but once you're in there, it's really about technique. It's about knowing when you need to use some muscle for it and when you need to just take your time and let it go through of its own accord. And once you've got that knack, then it's absolutely fine. We know that the 928 is a good GT car, and it, well, spent most of its life being a good GT car once the early 80s had passed. But what about as a sports car? Well, for that we'd probably need to up the pace a little bit. So let's use a bit more throttle. Let's try and get more of an impression of what this car is like as a sports car. I mean, once you've got some revs on the dial, it really, really picks up. These early 928 V8s are less revvy than the later 4-cam cars. Instead, you get this really lovely wave of power and torque. It's very linear. It just pulls from low revs and then revs all the way through without any particular kind of surges or spikes in the delivery. Getting into it now. About the handling, well, first thing to say is it feels very, very planted on the road. The steering weights up quite a bit once you get away from the straight ahead. So you always, you do feel a little bit the inertia of the car, but it feels very, very, very competent. Now, get through this corner here. Oh, that was a bit weird. What's going on there? Doesn't feel like you'd expect it to feel. And the reason quite simply is the Weissach rear axle, because that is something which is absolutely fundamental to this car. The way I try and describe it is if you go through a sequence of corners, left and right at speed, it feels a little bit like you're skiing. That yaw of the car, the way the car turns into the corner one way and then the other, it's not by accident. That's that Weissach rear axle, that outer rear wheel toe-in, effectively turning the car into the corner in a predetermined, pre-calculated way. And it makes what should feel like quite a big, substantial GT car, it makes it feel like something totally different. It really does allow you to attack a sequence of curves in a way that I imagine if they ever made a prototype without that axle was just never going to be possible. It makes the 928 feel so much more agile and nimble and keen than it would other do so. So, returning to our original question, could this car really have ever been a replacement for the 911? Well, my view is this: these early 928 manuals are a brilliant, fascinating and really appealing car. I love what it stands for, and this particular spec is fabulous. It's such a cool car. But by being so good at almost everything and trying to appeal to so many while asking for so little in return, the end result is a car that just doesn't offer the same emotional connection and challenge as its in-period rival, the 911 SC, when viewed through the lens of a sports car. I can totally understand why journalists and buyers of the period alike clamoured for the 911 to continue in production. That must have driven Porsche's engineers, marketeers and management mad. They created a car that set new standards across the board, and then the market said it preferred the rather odd, antiquated rear-engine car it was already making. If you love 911s, I'm sure you'll understand. The 928 then is a landmark in car design and development, but it is the 911 recipe that has endured.